when time is running short and you can't stand to read a book or a 10-page essay about one piece of odd history, you only got one place to go. History Under 15-Minute Show.
Welcome back, viewers, to the History Under 15-Minute Show. Today we are going over Western ideas in the 20th century through the lens of racism and
Remember
neocolonialism.
this, dear viewer. Concepts that are strongly tied to Western ideas are racism and neocolonialism, and they have a much bigger and older impact than what most people think.
The first piece of media we are going to go over is the book Worries of the Heart, which perfectly demonstrates the beginnings and consequences of neocolonialism perfectly. In Worries of the Heart, we see neocolonialism at work with the destruction and suppression of the native black people's culture in favor of the white Western culture. We see on page 46, the white Western Christian suppress and destroy the native black people's culture. And in this sentence, the Quaker missionaries had a long list of heathen practices that they wanted their followers to abandon so that they could take up practical Christianity. We see this perfectly. Instead of understanding their culture and trying to integrate Christianity into it, they deemed the native people's culture as bad and something to be suppressed, destroyed, and/or corrected in favor of Western cultures and ideas. Part 1 of the book allows us to see the consequences of neocolonialism with the creation of Ayden, the Christian village. The native people living in that village are being forced to conform to white Western ideas. The effects of colonialism, political instability, and foreign influence continue to shape different nations. In many nations, these problems contributed to violence, poverty, and conflict that constantly kept arising. In a memoir called The Long Way Gone by Ishmael B. about his experience during the Civil War in Sierra Leone, we can grasp an idea on what these negative effects could look like. The conflict in Sierra Leone was connected to struggles over power, resources, and lasting effects of colonialism. European colonization left many African nations politically unstable and economically dependent even after independence. This memoir reminds us that the effects of colonialism, exploitation, and violence do not disappear quickly, but leave lasting effects on different societies.
Our next focus, dear viewer, is the African nation Nigeria. Not how it is now, but how it was back then, in the past. During the 18th and 19th century, Nigeria was under threat by the British colonizers that came to the land, with the British colonizers trying to steal or control natural resources. What made southern Nigeria so valuable to British colonizers was the fact that it had no central government and was considered by the British as uncharted, making it easier for colonizers to set up companies. This motivated British colonizers to demand the native people to either help them or suffer by their hands. Eventually, this leads to most of southern Nigeria being conquered by the British and primarily used to produce more palm oil. Unlike southern Nigeria, northern Nigeria had a central government and religion and took immediate action to defend itself from British colonizers, therefore allowing northern Nigeria to stay protected from British colonizers. During the 19th and 20th centuries, some European Christians paid attention to the issues plaguing Nigeria and used those issues to platform their own beliefs, to the point of even getting the British on their side. Continuing on, the British government even enforced Christianity-based education onto the people. while at the same time separating them into fewer ethnic groups and enforcing them to adopt a universal language, destroying their diversity. And in 1914, there was the amalgamation of Nigeria, the combination of the north and south sides of Nigeria enforced by the British. But eventually, on October the 1st, 1960, through a series of nonviolent negotiation and reforms, Nigeria gained independence from the British. But the influence left by the British reared its ugly head through the form of the Civil War, going from 1967 to 1970. This shows off how outside influence through tactics of colonialism can directly impact and influence societies.
Throughout the 20th century, Western ideas such as nationalism, imperialism, racial hierarchy, and industrialization continued to spread across the globe. An example of this can be found in the movie Skin, which tells us the story of life during the apartheid in South Africa. One important scene in the movie happens when main character Sandra is repeatedly rejected and mistreated by white classmates and others a part of her community because of her darker skin tone, even though her parents are classified as white. This scene shows how deeply racism affected everyday life during the apartheid. Sandra is constantly isolated and judged only because of her appearance, demonstrating how harmful these political and social ideas are. These Western ideas about race and power have negatively shaped societies repeatedly. Another clear example of the use of destructive Western ideas, such as neocolonialism and nationalism, is the Wannsee Conference, held by Nazi officials during World War II. The Wannsee Conference took place in 1942 near Berlin and involved high-ranking Nazi leaders discussing what they called the final solution, or the organized plan to deport and murder millions of Jewish people across Europe. This conference showed how government systems and extreme racist ideology work together to carry out mass violence, showing how negatively Western ideas affected communities just like these. In the 20th century, governments around the world used political power and ideology to reshape societies. While some nations modernized and expanded, others suffered under extreme control and oppression. One tragic example of this was the Holodomor, a devastating famine that occurred in Soviet Ukraine under the rule of Joseph Stalin. Millions of Ukrainians died during the famine. Many historians believe the famine was worsened intentionally through government policies meant to control Ukraine and crush resistance, just like colonial powers controlled nations such as Nigeria for resources and labor. The Soviet government used economic control and forced policies to dominate Ukraine and suppress its people. The Holodomor reminds us when governments value power and control over humanity, the effects can last for generations.
Well spoken, Krista. Dear viewer, in this next part, you're going to hear a portion of an interview that Krista held with a historian to collect more information and different views on our topic. Hope you enjoy.
Do you believe Western influence overall improved the world or caused more harm? Why or why not?
I would say that Western influence caused more harm than it improved the world, because Western influence was largely through imperialism, and they really forced their culture onto different countries in order to indoctrinate people, and that led to a whole lot of wars, because obviously people gonna fight back in that essence, and war is never good, even though when you live in a capitalist country, war is good because war makes money, which is a big part of Western influence, you know what I'm saying? So I would say it definitely caused more harm because it caused wars, and it has led to a majority of the world being economic system being capitalism.
In this part, I can go over each and every single question that we had on our forum and the reason behind it. But the true question that everybody was required to do on our form was, how old do you think racism is? This question was supposed to gauge how accurate people are with their estimates on racism. Let's take a look, and I'll come back to you. As you just saw from the answers on the form, you see that many people think that racism goes back to the furthest point of humanity. I mean, it does. I mean, some definition of racism, it does. But the definition, the perception of racism changes so much from time to time. And in the past, racism didn't even exist. So the true question is, what do you define as racism? And how old is that perception? Outside sources and lectures. And finally, Wannsee Conference and the Holocaust and Genocide Studies. We also use OWP, or known as the Organization of World Peace, and Brilliance help to provide the timeline for Nigeria's history.